So first of all, we'll start with a small introduction because I don't think some of you never saw me earlier or in the past. So I'm Hans van den Berghe. I started as a mobile developer in 2015. So I started as an iOS developer here at icapps. After doing an internship in Ghent, I got this opportunity over here, and after a couple of years in building iOS applications in Objective-C and Swift, Koen seduced me into starting building Flutter applications. So yeah, most of you already know Koen. I think he's one of the guys that, he is the guy who started Flutter development at icapps. So he basically introduced everybody here, and he seduced me into start building Flutter applications. And now since a couple of years, I'm a project manager as well and team lead, but I still enjoy writing code. So last week I was in Toronto being standby for Cybels 2023 for fixing some issues still in the code. So I really enjoyed it, and also thanks to William to let me go because he did the biggest part of the development, but I was able to go there. But today I want to talk about our road to success on Flutter projects. Why on Flutter project? Because mainly as a project manager, I only worked as a project manager with Flutter developers. So I want to give some information about our journey, our approach, and some lessons learned. And I hope, as most of you guys are developers, that you might learn something on the project management side on how to implement this in your day-to-day life. Because I think there are some key things you can take with you to build even better code or to deliver even more qualitative code and being a better vendor for a client, for example. So basically, 2019, some small introduction in Flutter by Koen with some proof of concepting and some research. In 2020, we sold our first big project in Flutter. It was Cybels, and back then it was the year just before COVID hit, I think. So basically, we started building the application, and the moment we wanted to go live, COVID was there. We had to fully migrate the application from a physical-only conference tool to a physical and a digital tool. So for me, I want to jump really quick to the next slide. The sentence, "everything is a widget," really helped me, especially when selling Flutter. I hope that everybody sees this still as the same sentence, like it's a sales pitch of the year for me, but I hope this still works for you guys. Everything's a widget. That your code is still structured in a particular way that you can reuse everything. And I hope as well that you try to organize your day-to-day work as well as a widget, as small pieces of work that you can iterate through and become a better developer. Jump back. I think what we are very proud of at icapps is the COVID Save and the COVID Scan application. The application was built in more or less 3 weeks' time for the MVP. I want to be clear for the MVP because in the end it took 1 year, I think, maintenance, adding features and things like that. And again, everything is a widget. The application was reshuffled a couple of times, and for me that was very nice to see how Flutter works for our clients. So that's why I'm really fond of the technology. And also, we are aiming to push Flutter towards our preferred mobile technology. At icapps, we also do React Native and native development. But like our CTO is here today, and I know he's also very fond of Flutter. So we try to push it towards our preferred technology. So I hope we can work with the technology even more in the future. So everything is a widget, and that resulted also in quite a lot of sales and quite a lot of projects we already did towards the years. Started with a small one for Gaia. We had Cybos, which is a recurring business. Every year we have a new application. We have the COVID tools. We did some work for Signify. Also some Dutch companies like Good Habits and Ampere. So basically, yeah, Flutter is hot. Everybody knows it. You see it over here. Flutter is very hot. And as I saw that, like I already mentioned, like everything is a widget, I saw that approach that we should take that approach of small little things to implement, to iterate on. We have to bring that even further in our development cycle. So basically, as a project manager, it was quite easy. We have a widget, we have a small thing, we can build it. But why aren't our sprints or our Agile tasks, all those things, even split up in smaller things? So we started working on our small approach. Before going to the boring stuff, I want to give some more information on where the idea came from to standardize more our approach of approaching projects. We started with the template project. I'm not 100% sure if Koen or William or someone else from icapps already mentioned our template project. It's also on GitHub. It has some similarities with what the previous talk went about on how the dependency injection works like and how abstract classes should work in our approach and how all projects are structured. And basically, this was the start of our general way of working. And the most important thing for us is quality first. And that will always be key. If we want to deliver better projects, better results for our clients. So the template project looks more or less the same. This is, I think this will be the most technical part I will talk about today. But as you see, there are some similarities with the talk before. We started from the MVVM approach. So we started with an iOS from my side as an iOS side, and from Koen as an Android developer from his side on how they approached projects. So what we saw, we had the view model, that was a base. And then we saw okay, we had to even separate some responsibilities, so we put in repositories. Okay, we wanted to make them testable. It's very important to make everything testable, especially for our first client. There was testing very important. We had to reach 80% of code coverage in testing. So we tested literally everything. At one time, I do think we had like a 15 minutes build time only for our tests. So it took quite a while. We had screenshot testing and things like that. And yeah, this is the base of our approach at icapps and what made our projects quite qualitative, or still qualitative. But I do think it's also thanks to our developers at icapps. I do believe that the Flutter community is very strong, and I hope the community can grow and grow and grow, because we see that the knowledge transfer is also one of the key things to building successful projects. So please keep sharing ideas, keep sharing approaches, and do gatherings like you're doing today. So very thank you to the organizers today to organize everything. I think some logical parts from our approach are pull requests, CI/CD checks, unit tests, screenshot tests, and our analyzer. So we had some experience with it. So your talk was very understanding for us, or I hope for everybody it was, but yeah, we see some resemblance. So basically now everything is a widget. We had our basic approach, but still our agile way of working was still not working as it should. So now comes the boring stuff. My apologies for that, but the main part of my talk will go about this, on how we approach those things. But why did we do all those boring things? For you as a developer, you just want to write code and you don't want to be involved with all the governance, all the overhead and all those things. But as me as a project manager, I really love the resemblance between development and project manager. But why is it so important? Because we want to deliver on time, on scope, on budget and on quality. So basically, the last one we already had. We have our quality, we have our team, we have the community, so this is good. So now, for me, it's important for my KPIs to have budgeting, time, and scope. So we started with our baseline. A nice visual from our sales proposal, but it's the base of everything what we do at icapps. It's an agile way of working, and it's how we approach our projects, but it's also how we approach our code. So we will keep iterating on building projects and changing the way how we work to deliver even more successful projects. Basically, how we approach our projects are almost every time the same. We start with a very good understanding of our backlog. It's rather small, so sorry for that. It's not 100% visible, but we start with a very good analysis. We also at icapps, we try to aim to have two different Jira boards. We have a backlog Jira board, and we have from the orange part until the green one, we have a separate sprint board, where every time if we pick something extra up or the backlog is refined by the client, we put it in design ongoing, because one of the things we learned in the past, never go without the design. I have a couple of clients that we work together with. I can tell you some names, but I won't go there, where we didn't use any design. So the client just told us, I want this. Okay, we build it, and after that, requirements changed or his idea was wrong. So basically, start with designs. And together with designs, you also need user stories. I will go deeper into that later on. But going the flow, like we go from design ready, we go to refinement sessions, we go to planning progress, reviewing, testing, client testing to done. It's a cycle we try to iterate through every time, every sprint, or sometimes every day. So we noticed if we really followed this approach, our quality went up. So from my side on to you guys as a tip, try to take your time to investigate and to prepare before you start building. And how you should do that. Our approach on how we do it at icapps. First of all, we're going to talk about user stories, reference story maps, and estimations, and why it was for us a good approach, or how it was our road to success. First of all, who doesn't know, or who does know what a user story is? Who doesn't know? Does. Who does? Who does? Okay. Somebody in the room who doesn't know what a user story is? Perfect. Then I do think you have quite some good project manager and product owners at your offices. So a user story is an informal natural language description of a feature of a software system that are written from the perspective of the end user or user system. The user story for us is as small as possible. It should be a small increment of functionality, which is descriptive, feasible, and testable. Why are user stories so important is because they can be refined, estimated, and planned. And this is the base for me as a project manager on the success for us on how to start planning and having discussions with the clients, and how we started building our projects at icapps with small refined items. The refined items are very important. Same as we saw in the previous talk, is that when you take some extra time on how to build it, or what you're going to build, is that you are making sure that you are going to build the right things, but in my opinion also building the things right. So that's why I do think it's for you guys as important as well to try to use user stories also in smaller projects for yourself to aim for bigger or better quality. Also try to estimate them. And how do you guys would estimate a user story? Anybody has an idea? Yeah?
Does it fit in 2 weeks or not?
It's a small part of functionality. It's a user story. So
Right, that's how I plan it.
okay, so you plan in 2 weeks.
Well,
In
that's
sprints.
one approach.
Okay,
I'm
you mean in
just
sprint.
trying one approach
Yeah.
to start the discussion.
Okay.
Does it fit in 2 weeks or not?
No. Yeah, it does fit in 2 weeks, but you'll have multiple. You might heard of story points. Story points are units of measure for expressing an estimate of the overall effort required to fully implement a backlog item or any piece of work. It does fit in 2 weeks, but we try to make them as small as possible. Together with the user stories, which we try to keep as small as possible, we give an estimate on our stories. And why do we do that? To give a estimation on complexity, on how complex is that piece of item. And why is it important for me as a project manager, and I do think for you as a developer as well, is to prioritize it. When are you going to build it? It might be a better idea to start with building a more complex feature or a more complex user story than starting with a basic username password login, because it won't always add as much value for your user. And also, one thing to keep in mind, a story point should always be team independent. What team dependent is velocity. What's velocity? In agile terms, it's a metric for work done. It's the speed of a developer or a team, and it's expressed in story points. And it can be impacted by external factors. Why did I just give you some recap or some small introduction on agile and scrum development? Is because for me, as a project manager, like I already mentioned, it was the key to success for several things on how to plan our projects, on how to escalate to our clients if we were not going to make our deadline, on scoping functionalities. So that's why it's very important for us in our roadmap and to success that we need to keep those story points, stories alive. Without them, we are lost and we're just going to build something without something extra or without thinking about it. To help our team estimating user stories, we drafted a reference story map. A reference story map is just a collection of functionalities or user stories which already occurred a couple of times in previous projects and which we use as a base when estimating new functionalities. I do think it might be an idea for you guys to also set something up like this, because if you are going to do or going to make new estimations for other clients, or you start with a new development team, you always have the same base as you do sprint planning or estimations for your clients. You can always estimate in story points, and you always will have the same results for same functionalities. I was going to give a small, put it all together, but like everybody already knows what a story point is, what is velocity, what's a user story. I can skip that, but I just wanted to clarify that even in smaller projects, as you guys will probably do, use it. Use the Agile framework, use those small pieces of work to be on time, to build the correct scope, to not get lost in translation or in you see sometimes in younger developers, and when you start building a feature, they end up with a pull request of 2,000 lines of codes. And keep away from that. Try to keep on track, keep focus, and eventually your project manager, your boss, your team will be happy because you will have good quality and you will stay on budget. And yeah, what's in it for me or for you guys? You will have an improved organization, so you can remain focused. You'll probably have more or a better effective time management, better communication with your clients, client satisfaction, and personal development. I also noticed that our development team is less stressed if we have better user stories and a well-defined roadmap before starting building an application. And it was our road to success, and it is our road to success for next applications to look for resemblance between development and the Scrum and Agile framework. Also, some small lessons learned. This is not the holy grail, far from that. I just found it a way that, I saw the needs from my perspective as a project manager with what I saw as a developer. And it works for us. Try to do some spikes or some proof of concepts when the work is too big. And try not to focus on one platform at a time or one platform in total, because we had a proof of concept a couple of months ago building a CarPlay application, and we only did it on iOS, or only on iOS, and eventually on Android it was a mess and we fully went out of budget. So that might be an extra key to keep in mind. Also, if you're a developer, you shouldn't be a project manager, but it's always nice to keep in mind that how everything works and should be aligned, and always work with a design. So this is more or less our road to success with Flutter projects. It's a little bit shorter than I was expecting, my presentation, but I hope you learned something from it and may challenge your project manager or your product owner at your company to maybe alter your way of working to deliver even more qualitative projects. Thank you very much, and if you have questions, please ask.
I have one question, maybe.
I have two. Let's start over there. Good.
I don't know who was I guess this was a group effort to figure out your own agile process, but what was your main inspiration? Extreme programming, PDB? Was there any one school, or was it a mix, or you saw something and said, there's no way we're going to do that?
Basically, what we noticed from our product owners, that was the stories were too big, where our developers lost their way in how to build the application. And the idea came from one of our other product owners to say that, we should separate them in more smaller bits. So it was more or less a team effort, but we saw some similarities with Flutter development. Like, everything is separated, everything is a widget, and we tried to just mimic it in our process. So it was not just one approach which was the way forward. It was some of it was already in place, but it was too big, and we tried to separate those things a little bit more.
So focusing and getting inspiration from the tools that you were using at the moment.
Yeah, correct.
Don't look outwards, look inwards.
Yeah, correctly.
Yeah, and I also think, if I can.
Yeah, sure. You were there as well.
I also think because we already had a lot of experience with just native applications and web applications, backend applications, we also use that information, of course. It's not that we started a company around Flutter. No, there was already a company of, I think, 9 or 8 years here at icapps, and then okay, you evolve your process around what you're doing day to day. So I think because we already had the experience and we say, okay, how can we improve our current setup and what should we do with the issues we currently have, and that's what we ended up with and what we're still using today. So
Yeah, and not only on our mobile projects. So
yeah.
it started from a Flutter project, but now it's already went back to backend and web projects as well. The same approach. Same for the technical part, like setting up projects. We do see some similarities in backend and web project as well, with separating the view logic, app logic, and things like that.
Yeah, I think also the reference story map, for example. Previously, we were estimating something, and then another team did the full implementation of the application, and they said, "Wait a minute, this is this is not estimated right." Or so there was discussion there, and now we have the reference story map that is aligned between everyone. There are a lot of examples of, for example, adding Facebook login is always story points, this amount, for example, and then you can see, alright, is this more or less complex than the feature that I need to estimate, and then we have a better understanding between or across teams we need to implement it, and then we can just say, okay, who has half hour of time to estimate this, and then who builds the application eventually is maybe someone else, but could be just the same team.
Mm-hmm. And the only depending factor is then the velocity a team can make. Because, for example, a junior developer will have a velocity of 3 story points a day, and a more senior guy maybe have 7 or 8. Then that might have a difference on timing, but still the complexity is the same. So it doesn't really matter on who's going to build it or who's going to estimate it. Who's going to build it might be different. But as a project manager, it's easier to have some key references to story points to plan better. So 5 story points is 5 story points. We know the velocity of, like for example at icapps we have a velocity of 4.8 story points a day. So I know if a story, like a login, our base is 5 story points, I know it will take around 1.1 day to solve it. So I can go back to my client and say, okay, we have like 80 story points left, our velocity is this, we will end up next week at that exact moment, you will deliver, or we can deliver you those features. So that's why it's for us very important to have the...
Do you have a different velocity between junior, medium, senior?
Yeah,
developers?
yeah.
How
We-
does it count?
It's across team, right?
It's across team, but we do see, for example, if we have like, just going to tell some names, because, for example, William and Jordi currently have, that duo has a velocity of 4.5, but for one project, but we saw a velocity from Koen and Luca around 4 for another project, because there were other factors or other, difficulties in the project. So we have a global velocity on per technology, but we also have a specific velocity per team, which makes it easier per project to see where we are going to end up with.
You have a different velocity per team, but also per project then.
Yeah, because
But the general line is more or less the same. The average is more or less the same. I think it changes between 0.5 story points a day.
Do
And
you evaluate based on that velocity?
like performance evaluations? No, not really. Because we see that there are, for example, for the Blue Bike application, they had a Bluetooth lock, and sometimes the lock was just not working. Indeed, for example, Blue Bike, but on the other hand, in Ampere, we didn't really have a backend system. They just gave us a JSON, so we had to develop against a dummy service layer. So sometimes we had to do some rework because the dummy layer was not the same as what they told us it was going to be. So the velocity decreases because you need to re-implement something and reduce some time. But the general base is more or less the same.
and velocity is just so we can make an offer to clients.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a global,
Yeah.
global velocity, then you don't know how long it will take, what the budget will be. But I think after 1 or 2 sprints, we see, okay, this is the velocity for this team, for this project, and then we can plan ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Can you change the offer? If you made the offer with a velocity of 4.5 and then
We
you
tend
start and you see it's 3 because of the client,
then we end up most of the times scratching some features if it's depending on external behavior, like from the client side, or changing requirements. If it's on our end, we tend to push our developers a little bit more to increase velocity. But on the other hand, we also, there were some situations where it was fully at our end, where the analysis before the project was not good, so we just we did it on our time, so the client was not impacted. And I do think that we offer that kind of partnership with our clients, that we, in the end, we will end up at the same budget.
Is there a maximum amount of story points you would give a story and then say, okay,
Yeah.
now it's too big?
Yeah, we try to keep them until 13, so it's
You
Fibonacci.
also use Fibonacci.
Yeah, we use Fibonacci, and if it's more than 13, we split them into 2 or more if needed, and if it's needed, we do a spike. So meaning we try to take 1 or 2 days to start already proof of concepting or try to build it to see where we're going to get. You had a question as well?
It was answered.
It was answered. Okay, yeah?
In the beginning of your presentation, you said that at icapps you want to put Flutter first.
Yeah.
What's currently the decision factors to go with React Native, Flutter?
Yeah. The main decision maker is web. So basically, when the client is asking for a web part, so web application, or it should run on websites as well, then we tend to offer React and React Native together.
Public web or really web
Both.
application?
Both,
Okay.
even if it's an internal application. But that idea is shifting currently, because currently we are having some offers on the table to send out Flutter for web. But from my perspective and from the things I hear from our experts is that it's not 100% ready for it. We could do it, but it's not 100% ready for it. So if you have experience with it, please shout it to me. I really want to learn more about it and ask or sell it to our salespeople and even our upper management, because I do believe it's possible.
We do it since quite a while.
Also on public websites?
Not public CEO.
Yeah,
but
because that's still an issue, right?
Applications.
Yeah,
web
applications, yeah. Yeah.
Beyond the login.
Yeah, we now, like William today did an estimation for a web part as well, where we are going to propose probably Flutter for web.
We really use it as a differentiator as well, because we already had a client, we said, okay, are you sure you want this as a mobile application?
Mhm.
Yeah. Last week of the project they said, can you do it on web as well? And I think it took us half a day
Yeah, okay,
to deploy it on web.
that's good.
So we really use it as a differentiator. Okay, don't know which platform yet. Doesn't matter. Let's start. Let's prove it.
Okay,
Let's then deploy it on the platform you want.
that's nice information.
It was a good sprint for your velocity then.
Don't use velocity.
You don't use, okay. Do you use story points?
No, we stepped away from it.
Okay. I want to know why later on, maybe. Okay. So, then I think that was it. Thank you very much for the time.